Well, hello. It is me, Shanier K. Francis, owner and operator of Educator Empowerment Center, and we are here with another installment of our Thoughtful 10 series, where we provide you with some valuable feedback, practical next steps in 10 minutes or less, because we know that our educators are busy. You have a lot going on, and it's summertime. But because we are educators, learning never stops for us, not even in the summer. So let's get into it. So who are we here at Educator Empowerment Center? We are a virtual-based, teacher-owned and led education consulting company that focuses on supporting new teachers and teacher leaders. Now, we're not saying that veteran teachers such as myself are not important, but the way that we focus our company, it's really to ensure that the largest group in education, which are going to be teachers with 5 years or less, right, that they're getting the proper support that they need so that they can be successful, so that we don't have this constant turnover of educators every 5 years, that people are saying they're grounding themselves in the work and making a major impact in education, right? So let's talk about it. Our topic for today is effective versus ineffective versus bad teaching. Now, believe it or not, there is a difference between ineffective and bad teaching, and it's really important that administrators, building leaders, district leaders, and also coaches and mentors, etc., understand the difference between the two, because it's really important that we don't treat an ineffective teacher like a bad teacher, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So let's look at the differences between effective, ineffective, and bad teaching, right? So effective teaching, right? That's what we all want to be. Before we can get to highly effective, let's be effective first, right? So that achieves the desired outcomes. By teaching, we mean students learn the content that they are expected to and gain the necessary skills as well. Teachers must be efficient, setting up the right conditions for learning and differentiating their approach according to the individual and collective needs of their students. Now, ineffective teaching, right, does not achieve the desired outcome. They may fail at planning lessons or managing classrooms, among other things. Now, this is not to say that there is no learning taking place. We need to make sure we make that clear, but rather it falls short, or really short, of what could have been achieved. Now, bad teaching creates an environment where failure becomes inevitable. These teachers are discouraging students because they impede their intellectual growth, injuring their motivational levels or self-esteem. Teachers can act this way if they have not been prepared adequately, lack good classroom management skills, resist change or improvement efforts on their parts, or do not care about meeting these requirements. So this session is going to be a little hard for some people, because we have to acknowledge that there is such a thing as bad teaching, and there are people who are bad teachers and they do not want to improve, and we should not be protecting them, right? So let's look at effective, ineffective, and bad teaching, like gardening, right? So an effective teacher is like a skilled gardener. They nurture the growth of each plant or student by providing the right environment, the resources, and care. Those kids are going to flourish. An ineffective teacher is similar to a forgetful gardener. They might water inconsistently or forget to fertilize, which is going to result in slower or stunted growth. Now, with the proper training, that gardener can be effective and yield the same results. Now, a bad teacher, I want you to imagine a gardener who actively harms their plants, perhaps by using the wrong fertilizer or neglecting them entirely. Would you be interested in paying that gardener, or having them come back, or helping them become better? No, you would fire them, right? And so we need to have these honest conversations as between the difference between ineffective and bad teaching. So we're going to dive into a little bit more. So for today's sessions, we're going to focus on 4 elements: preparation, classroom management, openness to growth, and differentiations. Now, there are many more different areas, but that's just what we're going to focus on for today's session. So now, an effective teacher in preparation is someone who's going to internalize their lesson, ensuring that they understand the material fully, right? They may not be a master, maybe they're brand new, maybe they're figuring out, but they are going to do all that they can to internalize it so they're not staring at their lesson plan. It's not new to them while they're teaching the kids, right? They've internalized it and they understand it. An ineffective teacher, they may struggle to internalize it, or they don't fully understand the material. It doesn't mean they didn't try, they're just struggling with it. Now, a bad teacher shows little to no preparation. They wing it, they have minimal understanding of the material, and they're not trying to understand the material. An effective teacher aligns their activities with learning objectives, making sure they help students achieve their goals, while an ineffective teacher, their activities are a little disjointed, they don't fully align, but there's some alignment, but there's evidence of trying. A bad teacher, their activities are random and have little connection to the learning objectives. An effective teacher plans a culminating assessment that effectively gauges student learning. We cannot emphasize how important a culminating assessment that aligns to your objective is. Sometimes you create assessments that don't align, and as a result, students don't perform well, and then you say, oh, the kids didn't get it. Well, actually, no, you set them up for failure because your activity does not match what you've been teaching this whole time, and so you're not actually assessing that. You're assessing something that you didn't teach, right? So ineffective would look like assessments are not well designed or may not accurately measure student learning, while bad teaching, they just have assessments that's poorly planned or simply not there, and it does not reflect student learning. So if we look at classroom management for effective teaching, we're going to see a positive learning environment based on respect and not fear. Now, as a veteran, I always joke around, a little bit of fear doesn't hurt, but the reality is it should not be the basis of your classroom. An ineffective teacher might sometimes see some disruptions due to unclear or inconsistent expectations. Now, I've seen this many times in my mentoring and coaching practice where you have educators who are masters in their content. They know their content, they love their content, but guess what? The management gets in the way, and as a result, students are not learning. So the fact that you're a master in your content is irrelevant because students aren't getting the work. Now, bad teaching relies heavily on fear, intimidation, and negativity to control students. So I'm going to say something that might ruffle a few feathers. We all know those teachers who are the big bad wolves of the school, and all the kids are scared of them, and they walk around and they're so proud of the fact that everybody's scared of them and everybody knows not to play with them because they're this and that. But there is zero learning taking place in their rooms. The kids are just compliant. They're just sitting still. They're not moving. They don't want to hear your mouth. They don't want you to call their home. They don't want attention. They don't want to deal with your over aggression of them. But they're not actually learning anything, right? And we see this happening mostly in schools where there's a high failure rate, where the proficiency scores are low, etc. And so everyone becomes so concerned with controlling the kids that they forget to actually teach them, right? And so we need to recognize that. Effective teaching establishes clear expectations and routines for a smooth learning process, while ineffective teaching may rely on basic classroom management techniques that are not very engaging. So let's say you're a new teacher, you're struggling, and you're like, you know what? Tomorrow, everybody's going to sit in rows and everybody's going to do independent reading. Yeah, that may get them quiet, but it's incredibly not engaging. And not saying that there isn't a space for rows and independent reading, but when you rely on that as a classroom management technique on a long-term basis, right? Maybe one day, right? But if it becomes a long-term thing, then you're not achieving those results that you need. Bad teaching, inconsistent or unclear expectations that lead to constant disruption. Effective focuses on guiding and supporting students rather than controlling them. Our kids are not our prisoners, and we are not prison guards. Schools are not prisons. They are educational institutions where we are supposed to be creating free thinkers, supporting learning, etc. And that's what our classroom should look like, even when it's a little uncomfortable for us. Ineffective teaching, students may not be fully focused on learning due to classroom distractions. Again, in my teaching, I've had instances where I've seen students in the hallway and I'm like, why are you in the hallway? Oh, it's too loud. I can't learn in that room. I'm going to the guidance counselor's office so I can get my work done. How is that fair, right? So again, doesn't mean that ineffective, nothing is happening, but these really major disruptions is happening, and we want to make sure that we hone in and support those teachers. Now, bad teaching focuses on maintaining order rather than a positive learning environment. So teachers who are so caught up with control and order, they base the effectiveness on their teaching based on how quiet the kids are, not how much they're learning, and that is bad teaching. Now, openness to growth. This is going to be a big one. If you are not open to learning and growing, you are going to have a tremendously hard time in the teaching profession, because every 3 years we're going to see a new curriculum. Every 5 years we're going to see new state standards, and we hate it, but it's part of the job, and we have to roll with it. We know that every time we get a new mayor, a new superintendent, a new district leader, a new principal, whatever, unfortunately these changes happen. And so we have to figure out, one, how to advocate for ourselves and our students to prevent such disruption, but also how to roll with the punches and be open to that. So effective teachers welcome feedback from students, colleagues, and observations. Yes, students can give you feedback. In my state, we actually get surveys from the kids at the ending of the year, and I read those surveys to learn what I need to do better. Children should have a voice in their learning. If you're in a school where you do intervisitations, yes, your colleagues may be in your room, especially if you're a teacher leader. You should be inviting people into your room. Even new teachers, invite people in so you can get feedback. And obviously through observations, and we've all gotten an observation that we didn't agree with, that maybe we wanted to challenge, but we should always ask ourselves, what can we take from that is good, and go from there. Ineffective, you may be open to the feedback, but you struggle to implement the changes or improve consistently. So again, we need to learn the difference between ineffective and bad. When you're ineffective in this area, you are trying your best to implement what it is that you're receiving as feedback. You're just having a really hard time, or you can't do it all the time. And so we should be working to support those teachers in those areas. Now, bad teaching is you just ignore it completely, or you're completely resistant. And nothing that anyone says to you want to listen to. You've been doing this for however many years, and you don't care what they say. This person doesn't know what they're talking about, and you are completely unwilling to improve or adapt to new teaching methods. Effective teachers are continuously seeking ways to improve teaching methods and strategies, while ineffective teachers may not actively seek out opportunities for professional development. So if someone tells you to go somewhere, you'll do it, but you're not taking that initiative on your own. Bad teachers, now, this is where it becomes dangerous. They are actively sabotaging new initiatives, and we've seen this, where they will go out and recruit people to not support something new that the school is doing. They would openly say in the meetings that they're not doing it. Like, they sit with their arms crossed, they're rolling their eyes the whole time. They are actively sabotaging any attempt to make a change for the better or the worse. We don't even know if it's not going to work because you're not even trying to do it. And they are open about that, and it's obvious. That is bad teaching. Effective teachers adapt to instruction based on feedback and student needs, while ineffective teachers focus on completing tasks rather than maximizing student learning. And we see that a lot with new teachers or veteran teachers who are teaching a new curriculum, right? You always hear people say that you should teach something with fidelity. Make sure you do it with fidelity. Well, we say you should do it with integrity, right? How can you ensure that you get through material, but you're also making necessary adjustments to support the students that are in your room? And bad teachers simply just blame the students. It doesn't matter what happens. And yes, sometimes students can do things to sabotage their own learning. We know that. But it doesn't matter what it is. It's always the kid's fault. It's never their fault. It's the parents' fault. It's the neighborhood's fault. It's the music's fault. If they weren't wearing Jordans, this wouldn't happen. If they did this wouldn't have happened. Maybe the parents need to do this. And nothing is ever their responsibility. They're not accountable for anything. And we need to recognize that that is bad teaching. Okay? So now differentiation. Differentiation is really important, but we want to emphasize that we know that differentiation is hard. It is hard to create different activities, different supports for different learners in one room. And we do our best, and we should always do our best, right? So effective recognizes individual student needs and learning styles. While ineffective, you may attempt to differentiate instruction, but lack the strong understanding of how to do so effectively. And a lot of teachers, regardless of the number of years they have in the profession, are developing or ineffective in the area of differentiation. Even special education teachers struggle with this, right? Now, bad teaching, you simply make no attempt to differentiate the instruction and completely neglect the needs of your students entirely. Effective, you provide different learning materials, activities, and assessments to cater to your diverse learners. While ineffective, you may provide some additional support for struggling learners, but it may not be enough. Bad teachers, on the other hand, offer little to no support for struggling learners, and potentially they are widening the achievement gap. So we have to understand that when you have a bad teacher in front of students, they are actively contributing to the achievement gap. Why? Because if students are not getting what they need and they're not learning due to the result of the bad teaching practices of that teacher is an active culprit in widening the achievement gap of students. An effective teacher ensures that all students have the opportunity to succeed regardless of background or pace. Ineffective, advanced learners may not be challenged properly, right? And we see that a lot. Sometimes we get so focused on the struggling learners that we forget that we have advanced learners in our room and those students struggle. However, in a bad teaching classrooms, advanced learners become bored and disengaged due to lack of challenge. And what often happens, because those bad teachers are usually the ones who are the big bad wolves and don't play that, those advanced learners actually have a really hard time in bad teachers' classrooms. They're always getting in trouble. They're always being referred for suspension. Why? Because those kids are bored out of their mind with the structure of that room. And that teacher is more interested in control and order than they are in engaging kids. And so that disengaged kid is always getting in trouble in that space. Now, I know that I talked about a lot. I know we went over the 10 minutes, but this was really important, and it's something that we really need to think about as we're moving into the new school year, right? So we want you to remember that many times ineffective teaching stems from a lack of tools or proper knowledge. Practical tools like coaching, mentorship, and tailored professional development can do wonders for struggling teachers. They also need successful mentors to achieve their maximum potential. So this is really important. You have to match an ineffective or struggling teacher with someone who has a record of success in the area that they're struggling with. So for example, if a teacher is new or struggling and they have a hard time with classroom management, but their pedagogy is pretty good, you're not going to pair them with another teacher who has strong pedagogy. You're going to pair them with a teacher who has strong classroom management and strong pedagogy so that they can make the connection between those two things, right? So a lot of times in schools, we just pair people with who's ever available. So whatever teacher is available to do the work, that's who we pair people with, and that may not be the best practice, right? So we want to pair people with someone that is good at the thing that they struggle with. Now, this is where some people are going to get offended. We have to be honest about the fact that some teachers are bad and they need to go. And so bad teachers create, see, I'm so scared to say this, I'm coughing. But bad teachers create a detrimental learning environment. Their resistance to improvement and complete disregard for student needs necessitate a different approach. Counseling them out of the profession may be necessary to ensure all students are safe and have a positive learning environment. So it's really, really important that as leaders, as consultants and leaders, as master teachers, coaches, district leaders, etc., that we differentiate between ineffective and bad, because ineffective can be coached. And you as a leader have to be honest with yourself and say, am I the best person to coach this ineffective teacher? And if not, who can I reach out to for that support so that this ineffective teacher can become developing and then effective? Now, if we just have a bad teacher, we need to really say to ourselves and this teacher, what can we do to support this person as much as possible, but then start to lay it down so that they are removed from the profession? Because some people do need to be removed from this profession. This is a wonderful profession. It has its ups and its downs like anything else. It is a hard profession, but it is a respectable profession, and we have an obligation to ensure that the people who are in this space are doing their absolute best and that they are open to becoming better to support our kids, because it really, in some instances, is a matter of life or death for our kids to have the best education possible, and we have an obligation to push that at all times. So, with that being said, I want to just notify all of you guys of our Prep Period Prodigy series workbooks, which are currently on Amazon. We currently have 2 workbooks on Amazon. We are working on some more, so if you subscribe and follow us, you'll always be alerted when new workbooks drop. The workbooks are really geared towards new teachers, and we call them the Prep Period Prodigy series because the idea is that our workbooks are really short so that they can be learned, mastered, and executed within a prep period, right? That's why we call it Prep Period Prodigy. So, with that being said, thank you so much for watching our Thoughtful 10, even though it was more like a Thoughtful 20 today, but we really had to get it in there, right? Follow us on social media. We are Educator Empowerment Center on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our page and our blog on educatoремpowermentcenter.com. And if you have any questions or you are interested in joining our Zoom sessions, any of our virtual classes, or you are interested in hiring us to come into your school or districts, go ahead and email us at info@educatoремpowermentcenter.com. And we just want to give you a heads up that starting very soon, we will be doing our Zoom series for new teachers and teacher leaders. They're going to be about 60 to 90 minute virtual sessions in small groups where we are focusing on different aspects of teaching or teacher leadership, and that's going to be offered at a low rate per session. So look out for that. Make sure you subscribe and follow us so that you know when that drops. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this has been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.